Noah, these Twitter streets can be so unforgiving. Doc Rivers, his account getting hacked, his likes filled with pornography. I'm going to assume that's never happened to you, but maybe it has. Have you ever had your account hacked, Noah?
I do think I had an account hacked back in high school, and I don't think I ever got it back, so I was not as lucky as Doc Rivers. But I believe there were spammy weight loss ads or something along those lines, and I had to start over on Twitter. So lesson learned there to do my best to not be in that position again.
I almost had my account hacked, but it was actually one of my friends, my close family friends, reaching out to me, but it was actually the hacker pretending they were them. So I guess I got catfished and almost hacked at the same time. I ended up catching it though and avoided it, but it was close. Yeah, it is the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University. Wilmute Works, Danny Pommells, Noah Levick, producer extraordinaire Ben Barry in the cut per usual. Noah, the vibes are immaculate in the city of Philadelphia. We're coming to you guys following a big Eagles Monday Night Football win, which was, you might say, punctuated by Darius Slay handing the ball to James Harden sitting in the, I guess those are the Mike Trout seats, it kind of felt like. And, you know, it seemed like it was a moment there. We witnessed something there. We're able to take it in a victorious moment as citizens of this Philadelphia fandom. What did you think, Noah?
Yeah, James Harden knows how to make the most of his off seasons, and now coming to the final stretch of his off season. But he's got the birthday in there every year. This was a fun birthday, it seemed like, and the Eagles game experience, it seems like he soaked that in and got a Darius Slay interception ball. So not a bad night or a bad offseason for Mr. Harden.
Supposedly, he caught Darius in the tunnel after the game, got the ball signed. The two of them had some exchange, some words, some pleasantries, showed some love, took some pictures. And that punctuated, you know, the Eagles win, Harden's first Eagles game. And probably, I'm going to guess, he'll kind of go into the bunker a little bit here as we're going, closing in on training camp starting next week on the 27th, media day on the 26th.
Indeed, I think these, as I said, are the final stages. But yeah, Darius Slay, huge Kobe Bryant guy. So I'm sure it was neat for him to see James Harden at the game and the mutual love there. And I'm sure Darius Slay will fully understand if James Harden is not an Eagles game regular as the Sixers are in the midst of their season, during the winter months.
Hey, I was doing a little research, peeling back the layers a little bit as we were thinking of topics for the pod. And the 26th of next week is media day as the Sixers prepare to embark on their training camp away from home in Charleston, South Carolina. And, our producer Ben Barry sends us some topics. We kind of, throw them around and whatnot. And, one of the topics was kind of looking at the bench and this bevy of guys who seem to be kind of vying for these other minutes that are available on the team. Some guys who are new and a lot of guys who are already in-house. And one of those guys who's already in-house, Shake Milton, turns 26 on the 26th next week. And he's kind of about a handful of those 25, 26-year-olds on the roster who are in a little bit of limbo at this point. And you could put Matisse Thybulle in there, Furkan Korkmaz, both 25 and turn 26 next year. Trevelyan Queen, a new guy who we aren't quite acquainted with, but did get to see some in the summer league. He'll turn 20. He's 25. He'll turn 26 next year. And I mentioned Shake Milton, the oldest of the bunch. And it also made me realize I have kind of been neglecting giving some of my personal attention toward another player who fits in that mold, but not that age, is Isaiah Joe. And it got me to thinking also, like, if I had to choose between some of these guys and keeping them on the roster, trading them away, who you want to kind of put your chips in with and kind of hope that they develop a little bit more. and some choices need to be made. So I'm looking, and it really came down to if I would like to keep and develop Isaiah Joe more or continue riding the Shake Milton train. And I always thought that those two guys had a lot of similarities, and you know, obviously a step below Tyrese Maxey, but with Isaiah Joe and Shake Milton kind of in this boat where they're kind of pushed down the roster a bit with these new signees who we've talked about a lot, Montrezl Harrell, PJ Tucker, Daniel House, etc. Uh, are you, you're going to have to choose, Noah? You're going to have to decide who stays, who gets more minutes, who's you're putting your eggs in their basket and hoping they develop more. Is there one of these guys who stands out to you of the guys who are already in house who you're really pushing more to see them take a big step forward or think that they will?
I personally would not put Shake Milton in that tier. I think he's above that and just has gotten more opportunities to show he's an NBA rotation player and on most occasions looked capable of filling that job. But as far as the end of the roster, I think it's really fascinating and the choices might be tricky. And I'm reminded of the Brett Brown catchphrase, the gym will speak. I think the Sixers legitimately will have some internal competition here to figure out who makes their final roster cut. As things stand right now, they've got 13 on guaranteed contracts. Then they've got Paul Reed and Isaiah Joe on non-guaranteed. And then Trevel and Queen and Charles Bassey on partially guaranteed contracts. So not all of those guys can make it. You have to cut down to 15 plus two ways by the start of the regular season. I think I continue to lean toward Isaiah Joe being worth an investment if you can manage it. Now the Sixers' resources, roster-wise, are rather sparse as far as just being able to have any developmental sort of players they want. But I think Isaiah Joe, the idea of him as both a player who can grow, both literally and figuratively, and also as someone who in the playoffs this year potentially could do some good things for your team, I do think I continue to buy that. But as far as his preseasons, he's got a high bar that he's set. I mean, in my mind, he was the Sixers' best player last preseason. And to Doc Rivers' credit, he was in that opening night rotation and then wasn't too impressive early in the year. Just had a hard time
knocking down shots.
Himself. And then when he did get the shots, he didn't make them. So he's a classic make-or-miss league sort of player, but obviously really savvy defensively, and I think probably in some corners continues to be underrated there just because the lack of size leads to these assumptions that, he can't hold his own. He did well in Summer League, I thought, on defense in the post and showed a little more sturdiness. But the reality is he's still very below average physically for an NBA 2 guard, and he's got to fight against, all of the obstacles that go along with that. But with the end of the roster, I'm still high on Isaiah Joe, and I still think provided he performs well in camp in the preseason, most likely has a good case for, making the Sixers opening night roster. But there might be some tough cuts here. Charles Bassey, we'll see if he is on this team. I just think he looks the part of an NBA player. And the Sixers.
I know it's the youth thing probably with Doc Rivers, him only being 21 years old, that I think makes Doc Rivers not give him more opportunity. And you make some excellent points, and I definitely feel you on Shake. I feel, though, that if we're looking at like a stock up, stock down thing, that while Shake has shown, I think he averaged like 13 a game before last season or that last season prior to this one before Harden got here. If Shake, if we're doing it a stock up and stock down situation, if Shake's stock from last season, the shooting hadn't improved, particularly from 3-point range. He probably shot about like 40-something, 43%, I would say, from the field off the top of my head. And if I'm looking at Isaiah Joe's stock going up and Shake's stock maybe dropping a bit, while Shake does have a lot more resume to go on, I just feel like when I'm thinking about investing time and effort and energy, is Shake almost closer to a finished product, or is Isaiah Joe have more promise and upside that is worth, giving him more opportunity if we're talking about splitting minutes and things like that?
That's a reasonable point. I think with Shake Milton, it is notable that the three-point shooting did improve. If you look at his last 33 games, he was at 44% from three. That's counting the playoffs.
Toward the end of last season. Got you.
Yeah, the very end of last season. And, of course, just most of his years in the NBA have included these unfortunate injuries. And the back injury last year was a big hindrance and definitely took him a while to return to himself even after he returned to it. That's not making excuses for him continuing to decline from three-point range. I think that's undoubtedly disappointing. And I think we've seen the Sixers want him getting off shots quickly, taking all the catch and shoot chances that come to him. And he's developed this line drivey stroke that has corresponded with a lower percentage. So if he's SMU Shake Milton from three-point range, he's a much better NBA player. There's no doubt about it. And I think especially around James Harden, we all know shooting, guys who are viewed as shooters, that's awesome, and that's what you want on your team. So I think Isaiah Joe, absolutely, like him on the roster, I really like the sound of that. Him getting minutes over more established players, I do think he still has a lot to prove, because I think with Milton, just him as a multi-positional defender, as a ball handler, as a battle-tested player, no, he's not scoring extremely high in those categories, but to me, he is better off than Isaiah Joe in all those areas. Even look at the very final game of last season, Shake Milton was the Sixers' top player for most of that game and playing with an aggression and energy that bigger names lacked. So I think Shake Milton in the playoffs, we know he can do it. We know that he has that in him. And Isaiah Joe, first step is make the team, and then some of those kind of more ambitious questions, we'll see if he can answer those convincingly. But I do think he has the potential to get better. There's no doubt about it. And I think a lot of that is just getting reps, continuing to work on gaining that muscle, and with opportunities to knock down jumpers, showing that he really is an elite shooter.
And being strong defensively, I would definitely add to that. He definitely showed some growth in that area as the season progressed. And, hopefully he can continue to be quick and show that lateral movement that is needed in that area. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're looking more towards Shake Milton over Isaiah Joe if we were making a comparison. Where would you feel your thoughts land if I put Furkan Korkmaz in that conversation with Shake Milton? Are you looking, we mentioned in the previous pod about Furk not having to play those backup point guard minutes anymore, so he'll probably, revert back to his more traditional role as, instant offense, microwave type of guy off the bench. Are you? And Shake obviously offers more versatility with his to the basket game, off the dribble stuff. But we're talking about minutes at a position at two guard where Shake can probably play the combo like we've seen in the past. But if we're putting him in his most useful area, it will probably be more as a two guard. Are you choosing Furkan over Shake or Shake over Furkan?
I think a lot of it's matchup dependent. I think my gut feel would generally be Milton over Korkmaz, and then my second answer right after that would be the hot hand. Both players, if they're making jumpers, they're probably going to be more valuable than the guy they're internally competing against. And then I think it's also important to add there that Doc Rivers has consistently been intrigued by the idea of those two as a dynamic duo off the bench. Of course, that has not come to fruition in any grand way outside of one or two games where they might have looked promising next to each other. But I do think if that's possible, he'll want to explore it. If both guys are playing well, they're both probably going to receive minutes, provided with Korkmaz especially that he's good enough defensively. But I think a world in which both guys are on the outside looking in to some degree is most definitely possible because of this enhanced depth that the Sixers have. It's definitely easy to see a world in which Matisse Thybulle, Daniel House are both preferred over Korkmaz. And if Korkmaz continues to have confidence in shooting struggles, that he's sitting on the bench for some games. And I think that would be fair enough. So no doubt that for all of the 25-year-old sort of guys on this team, there's a lot of ways that this could go. I think there's a decent amount of variability here. And I think there's definitely potential in someone like Korkmaz, but a lot of it just comes down to make or miss. And I think that is less the case for Shake Milton because, in my mind, he does bring a little more to the table with some of the non-shooting categories.
And it's tough to give much of a nod to Trevelin Queen. He's just an unknown quantity. We don't know what to expect or what he will bring, even if he has a prolific camp. The fact that may or may not translate to games remains to be seen. So definitely a guy to keep your eye on, though, when the Sixers and Daryl Morey obviously see something in him. And we saw him in the summer league, and he has versatility, can shoot, and definitely has a bit of that dog mentality, so to speak. But if we're really being honest, Matisse Thybulle is probably the player of that group who has the most bona fide skill set of any of them. And we're talking upside. If he could just, we add that to Matisse all the time as far as, developing a three-point shot or developing some dribble game and getting to the basket. Three-point shot would be the easiest way to success for him of knocking down, corner threes, adding three to his defense. And his defense is a known quantity around the league and not just something that Sixers fans are fond of. Obviously, the notoriety of being all NBA defense carries its own weight. Are you looking for Matisse as a guy who's the Sixers are expecting to come into training camp with that three-point shot? Or are they looking at Matisse as a guy who maybe in the right situation could be a trade chip or something like that? What do you think their perspective is and what their hope is of what they're getting with Matisse realistically, rather than, what people, pray and hope that he might have?
Well, I don't think it's any secret that Sixers have explored trades involving Matisse Thybulle, and nothing, I don't think, changed as far as their willingness to do that, other than a new season's about to start. And with that being the case, you figure a Thybulle trade would be more likely in February as opposed to next week. So I think for quite a while, they've believed he's a better shooter than the numbers. I go back to a conversation I had with Danny Green last year in which he mentioned when they play against each other in the summer and he's guarding Thybulle, he's not sagging off him. He is guarding him because if he does not, Thybulle will take advantage of the open jumper and make it. And I just think there are clear confidence issues with his shot that go beyond the mechanical flaws that people can see with the elbow placement and the inconsistent base and what have you. I think there's clearly a mental part of the game that is very pivotal for him with the shooting. And we've seen when he does get hot, the shooting percentages are pretty damn good. Like with James Harden for quite a while in the, I believe, 20-ish games after that trade, Thybulle was around 40% from three. Not on a high volume, but I don't think we're talking about an inherently abysmal shooter. And I think the Sixers share that same view and believe that this offseason work he does with Phil Beckner and just trying to become a more capable offensive player, that there's a decent chance it'll yield results. Do I think the Sixers and Doc Rivers will enter camp expecting Matisse Thybulle to be a dead-eye shooter? No. But I don't think they'll be stunned if he's an improved shooter and he shoots the ball well in the preseason and what have you. But it inevitably has to be, you believe it when you see it right now with Thybulle. He's 25 years old. That's 7 years since his high school days. And the consistency has been lacking as an offensive player. And the problems that presents when playoff basketball rolls around, we all know about. So I think Thybulle, there's a chance he's improved offensively, but will that be dramatic improvement? Will the Sixers be banking on that? I think it's a no. It's a no for both those questions, and we know that's concerning if he's not significantly improved as a shooter. And I think even if the percentages do go up to the mid-30s early in the season, so much of it's about his reputation as a non-shooter, and that probably should be how he is viewed for quite a while, and that presents real difficulties for the Sixers when Joel Embiid and James Harden are sharing the court with him, because it's a lot easier to double those guys when you know that Thybulle's on the court with them.
And just to lend some credence to the idea of parsing out this lineup and how these guys are going to fit, we're already, ideally, unless one of these guys comes in and, turns, things upside down in these, 5 days of training camp, 6 days of training camp, like you're talking about the Anthony Melton 6-man, Montrezl Harrell 6-man, DeAnthony Melton 7th man, Daniel House, and then possibly we're talking about the 8th, 9th, 10th guy off the bench. It would be like Shake, maybe Matisse, Furkan, depending on all this, depending on the matchup. But Montrez and DeAnthony, you would figure, and you can include Daniel House in that conversation, would be fine for any matchup. So it's really interesting to see how this is going to play out and who comes into camp with what and how their game is developed and what they may have added to their game, or how, because you think of training camp, and we just went through Eagles training camp, and there is some development that goes on there, but in basketball training camp, it's not quite the same. Like you're already in shape when you get there. You're already whatever you have done in the off season is already come to fruition. It's not like you're coming in, I need to work on my left hand more. You're like in there like working on your non-dominant hand. But what were you about to say? Oh, no.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. Training camp doesn't tend to be the biggest deal in the world from an evaluation standpoint, but there are little important things that do matter when a coach and a GM is trying to make tough roster decisions. So I think about a Charles Bassey. What's his pick and roll chemistry like with James Harden? To me, that's pretty big. Like, is he committing fewer overzealous fouls and showing a better sense of discipline as a rim protector? If he's really impressive at that, then the case for Charles Bassey on the roster, maybe even getting some minutes early in the year, that looks much, much better to me. So it's not just, Charles Bassey overall, is a vastly improved player, but I think it's in some of these nuanced areas where it is, notable, and you can pick up valuable information. And if a player's not in shape, that's bad.
Right.
And that doesn't, reflect well on them. Someone on the roster bubble, sure. Like if Queen or Joe were to come into camp and to be winded an hour into a scrimmage, then yeah, I think it's a little easier to justify keeping the guy who is in good shape. So some of those little areas I think matter, but absolutely I don't think it's comparable to the NFL where you're analyzing the tape of the 7-on-7 and, totally just ripping a guy for, messing up on some small assignment. It's both just the holistic, how is the GM speaking evaluation, and then also these areas that matter for trying to build your team in the way you think is best. And I do think training camp is not totally irrelevant with that sort of stuff.
Start college, build skills, and complete your degree with Wilmington University. 100% online options and affordable tuition makes WilMU work for you. Learn more at wilmu.edu.
I didn't quite gauge, it made me realize I hadn't quite got your opinion on where Montrezl Harrell fits most ideally for you. Or do you see him, because you're bringing up Bassie, and I see backup 5 minutes for him, but a lot of people like Montrezl Harrell as a small ball 5. I think he's more, better off maybe backing up PJ Tucker at the 4. But obviously matchups and rotation and things come into play. But what's your ideal thought when it comes to where he fits best?
I think, most likely as a small ball 5 who can crush it offensively as he usually does in that role. I think if you are playing him at the 4, then that decreases minutes and team spacing with George Niang. Like he's probably more out of the picture. And I don't think that is necessary. And I think James Harden and Niang had a really fantastic offensive partnership. And at least in the regular season, let's see if the Sixers can grow that. I think Harrell playing at the 5.
With that in mind, do you see Bassie or whoever, Reed or whoever, featured less as that backup center then?
Yeah, I think it's more of an uphill battle for those young guys. I think unless Charles Bassie is incredibly impressive in the specific areas I just mentioned, he's below Paul Reed in this pecking order. Paul Reed was the primary backup center, did some good things in the playoffs in difficult circumstances, should be on this roster, should be a real contender for minutes behind Joel Embiid again. But we know that Doc Rivers and Montrezl Harrell, that's an established partnership. And Montrezl Harrell, as long as he plays well, I'd expect we'll see quite a few minutes as Joel Embiid's backup this year. The specific lineups will be interesting to track. I think we all know the Harrell-Harden pick-and-roll partnership. That sounds enticing, but perhaps Harrell and Tyrese Maxey is a duo that the Sixers can invest in as well, and maybe that can enable Maxey to thrive a little more in the pick-and-roll with a guy who's such a dynamic roller and knows all about the intricacies of setting screens and setting up his guards for success. But I think absolutely Montrezl Harrell has to be at the top of the backup center pecking order, presumptively. And then Paul Reed has to most definitely be in that mix as well. PJ Tucker damn well should be too. And then Charles Bassie is in a tough spot here. And like with Joe, I think the first question is just, does he make the roster? And we shall see. He's a young player who brings a lot of good stuff to the table in my mind, but he's on a partially guaranteed contract on a team that has some legit backup center options. Now, that said, none of the options not named Charles Bassie are renowned for their rim protection. So if Bassie can continue to
show some growth there.
To me, he was really fantastic as a shot blocker and has some NBA level instincts there, but don't buy it on the pump fakes, show a little better sense of how to do different pick and roll coverages defensively, be really active and assertive as a communicator. If he checks those various boxes and vaults himself, a tier below all these other smaller center options defensively when it comes to rim protection, then great. And his case for roster spot, minutes, etc. Definitely is boosted as a result if Bassey can pull that off.
Hey, make sure you go grab a piece of that knowledge that Noah just dropped and take a big bite out of it. Like an apple. Noah always in the know. I'm going to bet that when everyone shows up at training camp, all the players and coaches will have a 2-factor authentication process on their Twitter account. I'm just going to bet that and try to avoid all instances of somebody getting hacked or something crazy happening. But of course, I'm alluding to this Doc Rivers thing with his likes and him being either revealing a part of himself that we thought we would never know, or either he was hacked. But all the same, it's very weird to think about the Sixers in this situation and this being like, I don't know, like the 30th worst thing that's happened. Like, it's like you could line up like, all types of stuff that have happened with Brian Colangelo or Sam Hinkie or whatever else that would qualify as things. The Ben Simmons stuff way before you got to this Doc Rivers Twitter situation. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. It would not make the list if you're putting together weirdest or worst, Sixers online moments of the last 10 years. Yeah, I mean, I feel for Doc Rivers and the people who had to try to clean this up and get his account back. I guess try to bolster the security, but some of this stuff is unavoidable as a public figure where people are going to try to hack your account. And that was successfully done to Doc Rivers, and that's a bummer, but he got the account back, and I'm sure we'll be ultra careful with everything he does online from this point forward.
I'm sure someone will crack a joke. Someone in the media, assembled media, will crack a joke about it. He'll address it in some lighthearted way, I would assume.
You would think so, yeah. It's, I guess, the reality of being online that sometimes unfortunate, embarrassing, et cetera, things happen, and it's just tough. You got people trying to get his account back, unexpectedly at like 2 or 3 a.m. It's not a great position to be in, but absolutely, Doc Rivers now has some firsthand experience about account security, and I'm sure that will be a priority moving forward.
Hey, we are always making you our priority here on the Sixers Talk podcast. We appreciate your thoughts, comments, suggestions. Please keep them coming, and we will be sure to take them into consideration for future podcasts. And we appreciate you listening and watching here to the Sixers Talk podcast, brought to you by Wilmington University. WilmU Works. For Noah Levick and Ben Berry, I'm Danny Pommells. We'll see you next time.